at the time I noticed this one-sided sore throat. I just put it down to being under an enormous amount of pressure at the time and life changes. I had a tumor on my left tonsil. I was literally weeks away from not being here. It was stage 4. I kind of remember thinking, I don't really care what it is. I just want them to get rid of this sore throat because it was really doing my head in. I'd just done a motorbike trip through Laos, through the mountains, and that was a bit of a life-changing experience for me. So when I got back to Australia, I decided then that I would pack up my life and relocate to Asia, to Vietnam. So at the time that I noticed this one-sided sore throat, I was packing up my house. I'd resigned from my job. There was no physical lump. There was nothing there that indicated anything was wrong. I'd had an entire life of sore throats. I was very prone to tonsillitis. The antibiotics didn't work. My elderly mother, who also happened to be my closest and best companion and friend, she wasn't doing so well, and I was going through the guilt about that. And I just put it down to life, really, that, I'll be all right. I did continue to see a doctor. It got put down to pollution, to change of, all sorts of things. And I just thought, this isn't right. So I'd been in Vietnam. Actually, one of my siblings had had a heart attack, and I thought, good opportunity to go home, check on my mum, and just get a second opinion on why none of the doctors here can seem to work out what's going on. And I noticed I was taking painkillers. I was waking up in the middle of the night and taking painkiller. And I'm someone who, I just never, ever took painkiller, ever. And I thought, this is not, something's really wrong. By the time they got me into the ear, nose and throat specialist, he took one look and went, he went through the motions, but he obviously knew by looking at it that it wasn't good. He sort of said, it's this, it's stage 4. We think it's this, it's that, it's cancerous, it's this. And he told me a range of things. I think at the time, I just remember thinking, all right, okay, well, now at least we know what we're dealing with. And I know within my own self, I went, okay, I'm with the people who know what they're doing now, and this is a good place to be, is home, here with my friends and family. And I was one of the first patients to use the Da Vinci robot, which is a little thing that looks like R2-D2 out of Star Wars. And they come in and they do that. And they didn't know how bad this was until they actually got in there. And it was much larger than they had thought. I think it was about 7 hours of surgery. And when he finally got in there, he realized that not only was it on my tonsil, it had gone down the back of my tongue. So that's where I've had all my tongue removed. He took both tonsils in the end. I had a neck dissection. I had 30 lymph nodes in my neck that had cancer. I didn't have any feelings about it. I didn't have any feelings about cancer. I didn't have any feelings about anything really at that point. It didn't occur to me to have any emotion about it. It was a job to get through, to get sorted, and this is just me. This is how I operate as a human. I just took it on as a challenge. So they do that, and then they give you a couple of weeks to get your stuff in order. They threw everything at me, and I had 6 weeks of radiation and chemo, and the radiation was pretty high. I didn't really want to know anything about it. I didn't have any questions. I just thought, you guys know what you're doing. Whatever we have to do. The mask didn't really bother me, but I'm a yoga practitioner, so I just kind of chilled out through that process. But it is pretty brutal. Being pinned to any kind of board so you can't move is brutal. And they targeted basically the site, ground zero as I'd call it, the site with laser. The radiation, of course, though, killed anything that might have been lingering, and it went on to kill, what I used to remember as my swallow, my speech, my ability to breathe. The after effects of this whole treatment, in my mind has been as equally as brutal as the process and the diagnosis. I couldn't swallow water. I couldn't swallow my own saliva. It was scary. And I literally had a life flash before my eyes moment when a speech pathologist said to me, I was told that I may have a peg tube for life. And I remember thinking, no, that's not the way this story goes. And it really motivated me. I went from being asked to audition on MasterChef from a food point of view to not being able to eat. That process became my driving force, because my life up until this point had been cooking, food, entertaining, travel, wine. That was my career and my job. And I went from that to not being able to eat, speak, or breathe, or taste anything. I didn't know what a peg tube was. And, peg tubes get a bad rap, and they shouldn't, because I think they should be framed as a good resource, not an end resort. And I know from this community of head and neck cancer patients that pegs are seen as the nasty, and I get it, but that for me was the driving force. Peg tube feeding wasn't going to be my life. The thing that got me where I was the process of getting rid of it. But without it, I wouldn't be here. I just would not have lived without that peg tube. I had it for 15 months, so I didn't eat orally in that time. And from a mental standpoint, that was really difficult, because through that time I exercised. So I had an outdoor fitness group. I was doing weights. I started to hike. But my peg tube, I was always putting pregnancy belts on to keep the peg tube in my stomach, because it would just fall out. So one morning I ended up having to call an ambulance because I fainted. I'm on my own here, and I fainted in the bathroom. And then I realized it was because my peg tube was coming out of my abdomen. And I couldn't put it back, and I couldn't drive to hospital. I'm lying in there, and I just said to them, don't put it back. I made the decision for them in the end, and said, don't put it back. I'll take my chances. And that little kick up the bum for myself was good, because then I started working out how to eat. And that's when I started hiking properly. And how do you hike across a country in a foreign language with dysphagia and not know the food, and and you're burning, 3,000 calories a day, maybe some days. How do you maintain that with dysphagia and not knowing the food? So there was my project. At the time, I had to relearn to respect myself, love myself, and forgive myself for what had happened to me. And the grief that I felt, I recognized wasn't about woe is me. It was about, wow, I can no longer eat and do. And that life I had has gone. It has left the train station, and it isn't coming back. I remember the day that I finally ate half a piece of, I reckon it was ravioli, and I had half a square of ravioli and half a mug of Milo. It's a drink here in Australia. And I took photos of it, and I sent it to my family. I went, look what I managed, look what I managed to eat. That loss of commensality, that loss of sharing meals, because it is such a deeply ingrained anthropological process that we as human beings go through, is gone for many of us. And I'm trying to ensure that the clinicians recognise it. It gets told to people, told to their caregivers, their family. This is going to be a missing part, notwithstanding all the treatment side effects, the trismus, the inability to open your mouth, swallow, all that, pain, distorted taste, dry mouth, all that is still there. But this is another bit that I think is as equally as important, that loss of social eating, because it's isolating. People they lose food confidence. I know I did. Using the skills that I had, how can I create this environment to help other people who I know are going through this, because I see them asking the same questions that I asked when I was lying in a hospital bed, Googling anything to find anything about what I was going through. There was nothing. Cue the crickets, nothing there. Writing that book was like, I had to. It was never not going to be written. The first thing I need for people to understand is this journey really starts after diagnosis and treatment. That's when the real journey starts. There's a whole healing process after that. We can't hide this. This doesn't get hidden under clothing, particularly if you've had your voice box removed or your laryngectomy or whatever. You don't hide it. It's there for the world to see. Incorporating something in your life after this treatment that ensures you are sitting at a table. I don't care what table it is. I don't care what you're eating. But you must be at a table with your tribe, with your people, sharing those meals, because it's incredibly important. And in many ways, I'm living a better life now than I lived before. Have no fear. I actually asked my oncologist after all the treatment had finished, and I asked, how bad was it? And I was then told, if we hadn't done it then and there, you wouldn't be here now. Now I can look back, and I'm now 6-7 years out from treatment. And it just never entered my head that I wasn't going to make it. It just never entered my head that I was going to live with a peg tube for the rest of my life. It just never entered my head. I was so determined to have my life and do what I wanted to do. I've actually had people say to me, clinicians have said to me, we are totally amazed at how you have come through this, like chemo and blood levels and blood platelets and this and that. And a lot of people just don't make it. And I was just so doggedly determined to get through that. And I think that mental toughness was a big part of it.